New research is raising red flags about decaf coffee. Some health advocacy groups are even arguing decaffeinated coffee isn't safe for human consumption. The groups are petitioning the U.S. Food and Drug Administration to ban a key chemical used to remove caffeine. It's the same chemical used for paint stripping, metal cleaning, and other industrial processes. Joining me now is Dr. Christopher Labos, epidemiologist and cardiologist, also author of Does Coffee Cause Cancer? And 8 more myths about the food we eat, not meat. Well, we meat it too, then we eat it. Dr. Labos, thank you very much for joining us on this Saturday morning.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Okay, serious question. Does coffee cause cancer?
You have to read the book to find out, but no, I mean, obviously not. No, and that's, I think, why the title of the book works and why it's a little bit funny, because we have a wealth of research proving that coffee does not cause cancer. There is actually even some association that maybe coffee can be a little bit protective, although that's a little bit more wishy-washy. But I think we can say fairly definitively, in the grand scheme of science where we're often uncertain about a lot, and there's often a lot of equivocation about the relative dangers of this or that, I think we can say pretty definitively that there is no link between coffee and cancer, even when you start talking about some of these chemicals, whether it be acrylamide, like we were talking about back in 2018, or whether it's methylene chloride, like we're talking about now.
Yeah, that's the big question. How does the process work for decaffeination, and what does methylene chloride do?
So here's the thing. Whenever people hear about this, they often hear, oh, methylene chloride, it's used in paint strippers. You can't have that in your coffee, right? It is a very scary thing to hear. But we often forget that different products can be used in different ways at very different doses. So methylene chloride, which is used in industrial processes, paint strippers, or what have you, yes, it is a toxic chemical if you are exposed to it in an occupational work setting. So people who inhale the fumes of this when it's being used in industrial processes or who accidentally ingest it in large doses, yes, it is going to be dangerous. It can cause damage to the liver. It can cause damage to the lungs if you're inhaling the vapors. That is absolutely true. And that's why there are work and safety guidelines about its use and why it's actually not used as much anymore. But when you're talking about the microscopic amounts that are used in coffee, it's really unclear that this is really going to do anything. And a lot of this is being the argument that's being made is that, oh, if there's tiny amounts of this, maybe it's dangerous. But we don't have to say maybe. We have a wealth of data of scientific research that has been done on coffee consumption showing that there is no risk even with decaf coffee. So you can theorize that maybe a small amount of this particular chemical, because it's used in the decaffeination process, could potentially be dangerous. But we know that it's not because this sort of thing has been evaluated for decades.
And it doesn't accumulate over time or anything like that? It gets processed out of your body?
Well, most chemicals do, right? Again, whenever we talk about occupational exposure, and we had this very similar argument in 2018. If you remember, there was a California court case where they said that coffee needed to have warning labels and declaring it a carcinogen. And there were lawsuits, and the Starbucks and the other large chains went to court over this. It was all based on the assumption, or it was all based on the argument that there was acrylamide, a chemical that was part of the roasting process of coffee. And what's fascinating about this current story, it's the same sort of cycle. It's the same sort of argument. We have, tiny microscopic amounts of the same chemical. And when it goes through the scientific evaluation process, it turns out, no, there's no real danger because it doesn't seem to accumulate. The danger really isn't getting a large dose at once. So it seems as if every few years you have this same sort of cycle where somebody worries about one particular ingredient in coffee and forgets that we can look at, thousands and thousands of patient data showing no increased cancer risk whatsoever.
All right, I'm going to go enjoy my coffee. I'll let you do that as well. Doctor, thank you as always.
My pleasure. You take care.
Dr. Christopher Labos is an epidemiologist and cardiologist and author of Does Coffee Cause Cancer? And 8 more myths about the food we eat.